Welcome back to the channel. If you've caught any of my recent content about the Insta360 X5, you may have noticed that this is not a very conventional camera. And if you want to achieve high quality, compelling results, you'll need to approach the way that you capture your footage with an entirely new way of thinking, as the idea behind the way that 360 cameras work is a pretty different concept to most people. On this video, I want to go through a few different things that you should avoid doing to prevent from harming or damaging your footage, as well as some tips and tricks of things that you should do in order to achieve more dynamic and compelling final results. This way, when you finally encounter that once-in-a-lifetime magical pod of dolphins that have rainbows shooting out of their blowholes, your footage will not be ruined because you're able to avoid all of the mistakes that I see so many people making. And then of course, after we cover the don'ts, we'll move on to some of the do's that you absolutely should try in order to get some fun and creative perspectives that will only enhance the results that you achieve by using your X5 underwater. Let's start by looking at this video clip of me diving with the X5 inside of my local spring, and as you can see, we're just kind of gliding through the water here where the footage looks absolutely beautiful. Until of course we change the direction that we're looking in, because now we can see a faint reflection of the camera lens which appears to be reflecting off of the inside of the dive case. The one thing that most people overlook as soon as they start using these cameras underwater is the reflections. If you're not careful, the sun coming in from the wrong direction could result in a reflection of your camera lens being bounced off the inside of your dive case, showing up in your final image, rendering this footage completely unwatchable. However, there is a very easy way to avoid this. In this video clip, you could see that the sun is coming from the top left portion of the screen, and it very well could be casting an unsightly reflection reflecting off the inside of the dive case. A general rule of thumb is that if you could see a glint reflecting off of your dive case, then you'll most likely have a very unsightly reflection showing up in your final image. So what you do is you simply rotate the seam of the underwater dive case towards parallel with the direction that the sun is coming in at. This will completely eliminate the chances that you'll have this reflection visible in your final image. And since we're on the subject of harsh lighting, let's not forget that the sun will illuminate any scratches that are present on the dive case, causing those to also show up in the image. And it should go without saying that the best way to prevent this is to eliminate the opportunity for the scratches to occur in the first place. These housings are made of a composite plastic and will scratch very easy, so if you just randomly clip it to any D-ring and let it flop around, anything that this comes into contact with is going to develop permanent scratches, especially during the shuffling that occurs when getting on and off of dive boats, or the chaos that occurs during a crowded safety stop. And in my opinion, the best way to handle this issue is to employ two of my favorite accessories. One of my favorite accessories that's actually included when you purchase the invisible dive case for the X5 is the neoprene pouch. It includes a hole in the bottom of this pouch that will allow for your invisible selfie stick to poke through, and there's also a Velcro strap on the back that will attach to the shoulder strap of your dive kit. This is the best way that I've found so far to attach these cameras securely while still being able to access them easily when you want to start recording at any time throughout your dive. There is another way to do this as well. I've found a lot of success with the magnetic selfie stick holder, and this can be used in the exact same way by mounting it onto your shoulder strap. However, there is an attachment that screws onto the top or bottom of your invisible selfie stick, which will magnetically connect and then lock to a device that you mount onto your shoulder strap. You can then unlock it by twisting on your selfie stick, causing it to release. This method will secure your camera firmly and will be easy to access when needed. However, it won't necessarily protect your dive case from scratches, so if you choose to use this, I would recommend covering your dive case with a sock or some sort of sleeve. This is also a good time to mention that we need to keep the invisible selfie stick fully invisible. What I mean by this is that when you see users that are new to these cameras swimming around on the reef with the selfie stick bent at an angle just as I'm holding it right now. A lot of times people will do this so they can shoot directly in front of them, as they're only shooting to the front side of the camera housing. But I will say, if you're shooting like this, you're missing out on one of the key advantages to using a 360 camera, which is recording everything that's happening all around you all at once. If your selfie stick is actually bent at an angle like this, it'll no longer be invisible during the editing process, especially when you rotate the camera angle around and point it towards you, as you'll see the stick coming right out of your hand in the final image. And keep in mind that this can happen unintentionally when you're pulling the camera out of that neoprene pouch, which is why every time I deploy it, I always check to make sure that the housing is fully aligned with the selfie stick. Aside from keeping the selfie stick invisible, we also need to be sure to do what's necessary to make the dive case invisible. Just as I said earlier, when you're shooting with the 360 camera, you're recording everything all around you all at once, which means that you're shooting from both of these cameras in opposite directions, and at some point during processing, the software is completely removing that seam where the two images join together to where it's invisible in your final image. However, as soon as you put this camera inside of a housing and take it underwater, there's a lot of things that are changing, like distortion and refraction, and activating dive case mode will ensure that this seam stays invisible when your camera is recording underwater. So if you want to be sure that the seam is fully invisible, you need to remember to activate dive case mode. This can be done in your settings menu. In order to do this, you simply swipe down from the top of the screen, scroll over to the right where it says accessories, select dive case mode, and then just press enable now. However, if you forget to activate dive case mode before you put your camera inside of the housing, you can activate it afterwards by long pressing the Q button. You can then cycle through all your different presets by short pressing the power button. This is important because I'll usually forget to do this until I'm in the water, and this feature prevents me from having to get out of the water and crack open that dive case just to activate the dive case mode. Aside from the dive case mode, another mistake that I've seen people make is any sort of rotational movement that's occurring with your camera while you're recording. So whatever movements you decide to make, just be sure to avoid any sort of rotation, as you'll see that seam rotating around in your final image because the software will be unable to remove it. Now that we covered the don'ts, I would like to go over some of the do's that will help you achieve more compelling and dynamic footage. The first thing that you can do in order to get better results with your X5 is to do absolutely nothing. And what I mean by that is your camera is simultaneously recording everything all around you. So that means you're technically running an A camera, a B camera, a C camera, and so on. So all you have to do is hold your camera out in front of you during your dive. You don't have to worry about what you captured or what you need to do to manage this camera until you get back home and start the editing process on Insta360's Studio app. Once you become familiar with how these cameras work and how the perspectives can be changed and altered in the editing process, you can then feel comfortable and confident enough to start trying more aggressive tactics in order to try to capture something a little bit more unique. So as soon as you become comfortable, then it's time to really start thinking outside of the box. Putting an animal in between you and the camera creates an amazing perspective, as if you're taking a selfie with the local wildlife, where the animal is the focus of the shot while you are still visible in the background. However, be respectful. Only do this if the animal chooses to stick around and participate in this encounter consensually. If the creature chooses to swim away, do not give chase, and be sure that the way you're interacting with this animal is not harassment. Depending on the nature of the encounter, feel free to move in nice and close, as these cameras can focus pretty close up to the subject. This can create a very nice, close focus, wide angle perspective. And again, just be sure that this animal is happy to welcome the camera so close into its own space. As you're moving along the reef, be sure to move your camera through little valleys or past objects that can add to the composition of your shot, especially if those objects come in between you and the subject that you're intending to shoot, whether that subject is yourself or if that subject is your dive buddy. Take a look at this footage from a recent dive where I'm framing this shot to move through the doorway of the sunken ship as I am focusing on my dive buddy who is moving into the wreck from the other side. I then pull the camera through the doorway so that I can create a nice transition, moving on into the next shot. Let's also not forget to focus on tight spaces. Whether you're on a reef or in a freshwater spring, there are plenty of tight spaces that your camera can fit into that you cannot. And if you're able to find a way to light these shots properly, the results will always be spectacular, especially because you never know what you'll find in some of these caves and crevices. And the last one that I want to mention is probably one of my favorites, the split shot. If the water is calm, you can place your X5 on the surface of the water, allowing for the water line to cover the seam of the housing. If the conditions are right, this will create a very fun, very cool over and under shot. I also wanted to take a minute to mention a few accessories, some of which that I've found a lot of use for, and others that I haven't even had the chance to use, but I'm really excited to get in the water and try them out. Now, the one accessory that I've gotten the absolute most use out of is the Ultra battery. Now, I'm not sure of the exact runtime, but this is a 2800 milliamp hour battery, and I'm usually able to get through 2 or 3 dives without having to recharge or replace, and then I'll still have a little bit of juice left over at the end to review my footage. After watching this video, if you're going to pick up any of these accessories, I would recommend starting with that one. Now, the next one that I wanted to talk about is the extended selfie stick. This will extend roughly 3 meters or 10 feet, giving you a bird's eye view of everything going on around you, which is great for areas where you feel maybe too risky to fly your drone, as well as places with stricter laws like national parks or foreign countries where you're simply just not allowed to fly your drone. I've gotten a lot of great above water results using this selfie stick that complements my underwater footage beautifully, but don't be afraid to take it underwater and try out some new perspectives. Now, the next one is brand new to Insta360. It's called the Insta360 Dive Buddy. And as you can see, it's nothing more than a handle that your camera attaches to. However, inside of this handle, we have adjustable weights, allowing you to adjust this to become completely neutral in the water so that your camera can float around with you and record your entire dive. On the bottom of the handle, you can see that we have a 1/4 inch screw port where you can attach this 3-legged stand, allowing it to sink all the way down to the bottom so that you can use it as a tripod. Now, as this camera is floating around in your environment, I'm sure you can understand why I wouldn't recommend for this to be used on a drift dive or any sort of environment that has strong currents, as your X5 will easily drift away from you, getting beyond your reach, causing you to never see it again. The other accessory that I'm excited to try out is the motorcycle U-bolt. This accessory will attach to the neck of your dive tank, extending the camera over your head, which will allow you to record a third-person perspective of your entire dive. This kind of reminds me of some sort of video games where you can relive your experiences through that third-person Grand Theft Auto style view. I'll be sure to post a video very soon of me using both of these accessories out in the field, as I'm very excited to see what kind of results that I can achieve with these two new tools. Now, because this video is sponsored by Insta360, you can pick up all of these items that I covered today on my affiliate link down in the description. And because Insta360 is running a Black Friday special, you can take advantage of the special pricing through most of December. So if you're going to pick up any of these accessories, now is definitely a good time to do so. And I also wanted to remind you, if you haven't yet pulled the trigger on purchasing an X5 and you have plans on taking it underwater, do so through the dive bundle, which will give you all the tools you need to record beautiful underwater footage at a cost much lower than purchasing a la carte. And if you're still on the fence, I hope that everything that I showed you in this video clearly outlines the huge creative advantages that you'll gain with the X5 and its 360-degree capability, along with its added creativity and uniqueness that is placed right in your hands with this type of camera, as opposed to the limited field of view that you'll get with the GoPro Hero 13 or any other conventional action camera. Keep in mind with the X5, you can shoot first, frame later, whereas the GoPro is more of a point-and-shoot device that requires you to focus on what direction you're pointing the camera in, what you're getting in frame, and also the operational aspects of the camera itself. However, with the X5, you can simply just enjoy your dive, and afterwards in the editing process, you then have the creative ability to do things like to store your image into a tiny planet, or reframe it as naturally as you desire, or even reframe yourself into your shot and keep the selfie stick completely invisible. And this can be done by manually adding keyframes into your footage, or by using an amazing feature known as Deep Track that will automatically track your subject. And with features like Pure Video or Aquavision 3.0, you can be sure to have the best low light performance and the best underwater color correction available on the market for these amazing little action cameras. For example, this is what our footage looks like before Aquavision 3.0 has been applied. You can then select the toggle to activate the feature, then choose the AI generated color correction that you prefer, adjust the strength, and now you have your final results. Or in this case, the final results are not only correcting the color of my flashlight, but it's also bringing us plenty of detail in the darker areas. So if you've been considering purchasing an X5, I would say that the Black Friday special that Insta360 is currently running would be a great time to do so, and that's going to bring this video to a wrap. I hope that you found these tips and tricks useful, and I hope to see you in the water sometime very soon with an X5 of your own. I can't wait to see you on the next dive. Thanks for watching.